The following program presents principles designed to promote good health and is not intended to take the place of personalized professional care. The opinions and ideas expressed are those of the speaker. Viewers are encouraged to draw their own conclusions about the information presented.
Hello and welcome to Health for a Lifetime. I'm your host Don McIntosh, and we're glad that you've joined us today. In your life, perhaps you have stressors that are really troubling you, and today we're going to learn it depends a lot on your viewpoint as to whether or not you're going to get through those stressors. Joining us today is Dr. Skip McCarty. He is a specialist actually in stress management. You've done seminars now for over 20 years. You've developed a seminar that's available. You need more information on how to get that. They can contact 3ABN, but you've had a lot of exciting things come out of your work, and today we're going to be talking about an aspect of it that deals with our viewpoint. One of the things that's been helpful to me as I've looked at your seminar is this idea of a stress tank, and maybe you can work us into that, and then how viewpoint fits into it.
Okay, Don, the stress tank model came out of Australia actually, and then I reformed it based on my research. Essentially invites us to think of our life as a tank, and every day we have these stressors pouring into our lives. Every day we can't get away from that in living in this world. And if stress levels rise to the overflow point, then various kinds of harm can result from that. Physical illnesses, accidents, etc. Fortunately, there's a pressure relief valve on our tank that can drain the stress to safe levels. And there's 7 keys to managing stress and keeping that pressure relief valve open. Also ways we can close a pressure relief valve thinking we're helping it. Here's the 7 keys.
Prayer, relaxation, exercise, and then viewpoint is number 4, you're calling it?
Well, on that particular list, simply because we put it in a acronym.
Okay.
To prevent stress overload and keeping it fully open.
Okay, so how important then is it in terms of the big scheme of things?
Okay, Don, we've created a stress management pyramid as well. On the stress management pyramid, we have at the bottom of the pyramid, we have the things that are foundational, very important. But as you move up the stress pyramid,
even more important?
Every one of those 7 keys becomes even more important. And you see viewpoint is right up toward the top.
Right up there.
Very, very important. It's in the power position. The bottom 4 are foundational. The top 3 are the power position of stress management. Viewpoint it's that important.
So in other words, your point of view or your viewpoint is very important. What exactly does that mean? What exactly are you talking about when you're talking about viewpoint?
Okay, researchers distinguish between what they call real stress and process of stress. Okay, real stress, Don, would be if I was holding a gun to your head, for instance, that would be a real threat to you.
That would be real stress, yes.
A real threat to you.
Okay.
But process of stress would be if we were at a party, you didn't like me, let's say. I had hurt you in some time in the past. You were at a party, you were having a great time. I walked into the room and you saw me.
Okay.
Suddenly,
that
very similar kinds of things start to take place in your body.
Okay.
That's right.
Nothing had happened yet, but I think maybe something will.
Exactly.
Okay.
We've got a slide that shows what I call a beginning level understanding of stress, which really is real stress, and that is the activating event leads to a consequence. In other words, the stressor, me holding the gun to your head, leads to a biochemical reaction in your body. You start pumping adrenaline, cortisol levels rise, and have an emotional response and maybe even a behavioral response. Mm-hmm. And the next level, the next slide shows the advanced understanding. 95% of the stress we experience in this life is processive. What happens is filtered through your belief system. I simply walk into the room. I'm no real threat to you, but I walk into the room. You don't like me. Something in your belief system filters through my presence in that room, and it leads to stress. And it was your belief system that contributed. The way you processed it mentally actually created the stress.
So you're saying that really the way I believe about things creates stress for me.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
And so what should I do about this?
Well, there are, I'd like to just show another stage of this process here. This is Dr. David Burns at the University of Pennsylvania. He diagrams it like this. He says there's this real world out there that is filled with harmful things to us and positive things and neutral things. And we process all those things through our thoughts, and that creates our mood or our stress level. The next slide shows if you translate this into actual stress language, you have the stressors that are taking place out there.
Gun to your head.
Yeah, or just somebody walking in the room. But your belief system actually assigns a meaning.
He could hurt me with that gun, or he could hurt me because he's done that before.
Yeah,
Okay.
he could walk up and say something to me that would embarrass me, for instance.
All right.
And that then contributes to your stress level.
Okay. And it's real stress if it's a gun, but it's process stress if it's just a person walking in.
That's exactly right.
The idea. Okay, so are there more specific beliefs that can actually produce this or lead to this?
Beliefs are very powerful to create or reduce stress, in fact. The next graphic we're going to show here shows that, look at that stressor, you have those small arrows. It's just something neutral, maybe even positive, but I have a belief, a stress-inducing belief I call it, that actually enables that stressor, it supercharges it, and by the time it gets to me, after it being filtered through my belief system, it actually induces stress. Mm-hmm. Now beliefs, Don, can do exactly the opposite as well. The next slide will show the effects of stress-reducing beliefs. Here's a stressor that before has been very negative to me. Okay. Me walking in that room has just upset you so many times because I've hurt you in the past, and you expect it again. Mm-hmm. But now you've learned to change your belief system with respect to this, and so that negative stressor, that previously negative stressor, now is disabled, and you can actually, through your belief system, reduce the distress level.
So we need to be thinking of those kind of things.
That's exactly right.
Stress.
To learn how to think differently, to process things differently, to develop a healthy set of beliefs that will enable us to disable potentially stressful situations to cause stress for us.
So are there specific beliefs that can actually produce these things?
Yes. You take, for instance, people that I don't know if you've ever known anybody who was afraid to fly.
Oh, yeah.
I have relatives who are afraid to fly. And interestingly enough, they may travel a long distance, 1,000 miles, 1,500 miles in the car in the winter.
Instead of being in an airplane.
Instead of being in an airplane, and actually consider that safer because they're afraid to fly. And many people are afraid to fly. And
well, I think probably another example that I could think of, I'm just testing this out with you.
Okay.
If you do very poorly on a test, say you're a young child, or you feel you're made bad, whatever the subject is, you feel like you're not that smart, you don't want to do that again, even though you may or may not be smart in that area. You just feel like you were so put down that it stunts you because it's an imagined belief about yourself.
Okay. Every time you're then required to take a test of some kind,
right,
it has that effect on you.
That would be the
level.
same kind of thing?
It would be similar, yeah. Now, what you look at is what's the basis for that fear? For instance, Don, why would somebody be afraid to fly?
Maybe a recent hijacking, a terrorist act, or something like that?
Yes. And also, every time there's a major airliner come down, mm-hmm. It's in the newspapers. We have the benefit in this culture today of getting the black box and hearing back the last words. And
you hear it over and over again, sort of like the incident in New York City.
They keep replaying it, exactly right. They keep replaying these things. And we actually put ourselves in the position of a passenger on that plane. Every time we hear that back, we think, what would it have been like to be a passenger on that plane? Mm-hmm. And so we generate these fears. And if you're looking for evidence that planes are unsafe to fly, you're going to find that evidence. It's out there.
Mm-hmm. And so this is a process that our mind goes through, and it really makes this, it has the same effect as the actual event if that was happening almost.
That's exactly right. Your body doesn't know the difference. And when you are thinking about being in a plane that's going to crash, mm-hmm. or that's being hijacked, your body biochemically begins to react with adrenaline, with adrenaline output, with cortisol levels rising in your body, which is the damaging. Cortisol, as far as we understand this, cortisol levels are damaging to the immune system. That's why stress can be so contributory to illnesses and diseases.
So it's not something we should mess around with. We need to get a handle on what to do when we have these stress-inducing beliefs and take care of them. How could you sum this up?
Well, because so many stress-inducing beliefs are, in fact, just that. It's just our belief system. We're processing the stress. We're creating stress through our belief system. Now, the reality is that statistically, do you know how long you would have to fly if you were flying for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year before a plane that you were in would crash, statistically, based on just statistics, the number of miles flown to the number of planes coming down?
I'm not sure. What would it be? I have no idea. 20 years?
434 years.
Oh, I think I could probably get where I'm going in that amount of time.
And even that's flying nonstop, 434 years, statistically. That doesn't mean there aren't people that come down and people that die.
Mm-hmm.
But statistically, it's 250 times safer to be in an airplane mile per mile than it is an automobile mile per mile. 250 times more safer. So just replacing that belief can make a difference in how you feel about flying, for instance.
So
focus on that.
So viewpoint is very important, and that very fact right there can help change our viewpoint. Well, someone once said, most accidents happen within 25 miles of home, so I moved. That's probably not going to work, that one, but this viewpoint of what really actually happens helps us.
In fact, if you ask people what's the most dangerous part of flying, many people will say it's the takeoff or the landing. But in reality, the most dangerous part of flying is the drive to the airport. That's statistically the truth. Now, if you rely, and almost everything we experience in life has at least two sets of data. And the stress that is, so because 90 to 95% of the stress we experience in life today, in today's world, is processive stress. It's how we're processing things. It's the data that we choose to focus on that determines whether we're going to be stressed by our relationship to whatever's happening there.
Is there a way that you could sum this up for us?
Yes, there is. There's kind of a phrase that I use that I think is very powerful. And if somebody just took this thought away with them from our discussion today, if we can change an interpretation of an event, we can effectively change the impact that event will have on us.
So if we can change the interpretation of an event, we can effectively change the impact it has on us. So this then is not just a statement, it also is a question, and maybe that's where we should pick it up when we come back. Can we in fact change the interpretation of events so that our stress level will go down? We're talking with Dr. Skip McCarty. We're talking about material from his Beyond Coping seminar on stress, and we hope that you've found it enjoyable and that you join us when we come back.
Have you found yourself wishing that you could shed a few pounds? Have you been on a diet for most of your life, but not found anything that will really keep the weight off? If you've answered yes to any of these questions, then we have a solution for you that works. Dr. Hans Diehl and Dr. Eileen Ludington have written a marvelous booklet called Reversing Obesity Naturally, and we'd like to send it to you free of charge. Here's a medically sound approach successfully used by thousands who were able to eat more and lose weight permanently without feeling guilty or hungry through lifestyle medicine. Dr. Diehl and Dr. Ludington have been featured on 3ABN, and in this booklet, they present a sensible approach to eating, nutrition, and lifestyle changes that can help you prevent heart disease, diabetes, and even cancer. Call or write today for your free copy of Reversing Obesity Naturally, and you could be on your way to a healthier, happier you. It's absolutely free of charge, so call or write today.
Welcome back. We've been talking with Dr. Skip McCarty. We're talking about stress, and we're talking about your viewpoint, what we can do to, what would you say, reduce or alleviate stress by our viewpoint. And we've talked about how there are stress-inducing beliefs that we can have that can be very harmful. When we stopped talking, you were making a claim that it was possible to convert harmful stress to beneficial stress through a healthy viewpoint. How in the world would you do this?
Okay, Don. We've talked about there are stress-inducing beliefs that we all have that create stress. 90 to 95% of the stress we experience in today's world is processive stress. We create it by our own viewpoint. Now, number one, if you want to change your viewpoint to reduce your stress and manage your stress levels, number one, every time you have a stress-inducing belief that's manifesting itself and creating stress in your life, challenge that belief. Challenge it rigorously. Never allow it to go on.
So as soon as you think something like that, you go, wait a minute, why am I thinking that? And just analyze it, scrutinize it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, how can someone determine if they have such beliefs?
Well, that's a very good question, because I can tell you, if I asked you right now to write down all your stress-inducing beliefs, you might be able to come up with one or two, but generally we don't know. That there's two primary ways to do that. Number one is by our self-talk.
Okay.
We're constantly talking to ourselves. We're sending messages to ourselves just constantly. And to get in, if we had a ticker tape or a printout of all of our self-talk, we would see those beliefs would be manifest to us. So just listening to ourselves, listening to what we're saying to ourselves.
What we're saying in the mirror. I guess that's what that graphic means there. Okay, good.
Yes.
Analyze your self-talk.
The person looking in the mirror there is
talking to themselves.
They're interpreting what they're seeing in the mirror.
Okay.
And they're saying something to themselves, and if they'll listen to what they're saying to themselves, they're actually creating stress by what they're saying. And they need to start challenging the words that they're saying that are creating stress.
So if I'm saying to myself, you're no good, you've got to say, wait a minute, maybe I need to think about that. Maybe I am good. Is there any other way besides self-talk that we can challenge these beliefs?
Yes, there is. The second way, it's equally as important as self-talk, is to work backward from what we call C, or the consequence of stress, to A, the stressor, and then work forward to beliefs. In other words, Don, you walk into the room. You've hurt me so many times in the past. I'm having a great time at this social function, but you walk into the room and suddenly my adrenaline levels go up, my cortisol level goes up, and I'm defensive now, and I'm just ready to get hurt again. And what happens, once that happens, that's the consequence. My fear, I feel that rush of adrenaline within me, that's the consequence, that's the C. And I work backward from that to A, to the stressor. What just happened to create that? I sense that happening within me. Or you do something that makes me angry. That's a stress response. So then I say, okay, what has just happened? I work back to the stressor. You just walked in the room, or you just said something to me. Then I work from there and say, you know what? Don walking in the room does not have the power to create this. Suddenly my adrenaline starts flowing, or I get stressed. He doesn't have that power. Even him saying those words doesn't have the power to make me angry. What is it I'm thinking? What is it I'm believing about that, about those words he says, or about just his presence in this room that's creating this? Well, I'm thinking that because he's said things that have hurt me in the past, because he's tried to humiliate me in social groups in the past, he's probably going to do it again.
And that's a leap. And that's probably a leap.
That is.
Okay, so once you've discovered these self-inducing stressors or beliefs that cause stress, and you're starting to discover them, and you're going from looking at self-talk and working from C back to A, and you have a list of them that you know are there, what do you do then?
Okay, Don, first of all, you've challenged those stress-inducing beliefs. You've identified them and challenged them. Secondly, now you replace the stress-inducing beliefs with stress-reducing beliefs. Okay. Very important step, vital.
So here's A, here's B, you replace it. So what are you saying? Do we just make up beliefs? No. I mean, that's one option. You just make stuff up. But no, we're not talking about that. We're talking about reality-based beliefs. And for instance, in the plane incident where someone's afraid to fly because they've seen all the paper reports and news reports of planes that have come down, they visualize themselves being on those planes. Well, if they look at the evidence, that's 250 times safer to fly than to drive. Okay. Statistically, then that's a reality-based belief. You replace that belief. So if they do have to fly next time, they wouldn't be as fearful, as an example. So put that fact in the place of the fear. That's right. Or whatever it is. Okay, right. Let's go on. Do you have some other examples that you can share of this? Yes, I do. Okay, let's look at them. For instance, if a person says to themselves, life must be fair to me at all times. Okay, that's a stress-inducing belief. Certainly is. Now, Don, I have never said to myself, life must be fair to me at all times. I doubt that you ever have. But what happens when something grossly unfair happens to you? You say, wait a minute, that's not fair. See, that's the C, that's the consequence. When something grossly unfair happens to you and it just upsets you, it frustrates you, maybe makes you angry, and it's not something that just comes and goes, but I mean, you stew on it over a period of time. And after a while, you may obsess on it. What's happened is that is a stress-inducing belief that you have, whether or not
I don't want to admit that I have a stress-inducing belief so ridiculous as life must be fair to me at all times, but the fact is, if something really bad happens to me, very unfair, and I start obsessing about it, it really affects other aspects of my life, then that is a stress-inducing belief I have. I need to replace it with a stress-reducing belief.
So what would you replace it with?
It would look something like this as an example.
Okay.
I would always like to be treated fairly. Now, is that a reality-based statement?
It is, because that's realistic.
Exactly. But everyone is treated unfairly at times. Is that reality-based?
That's very reality-based.
It is. Okay. Now, it is possible to be treated unfairly and still be happy.
Yeah.
Is that reality-based?
Sure. That's.
How do we know it is?
Hebrews 11. That's the faith chapter. All these people were treated in certain ways, but reality was they had real stressors, but still they are,
Exactly. By the examples. There's people around us, too, treated grossly unfairly, and yet they're almost heroic in the way they approach it. Because of that, we know that's a reality-based belief. Now, here's what happens, Don. The next time something really unfair happens to me, and I'm really upset about it, when I literally, my self-talk, when I start plugging in those words, I'd always like to be treated fairly, but many things happen in life that aren't going to be fair. It's possible to be treated fairly and still be happy. I just start running that tape in my mind. You know what happens? Before long, my emotions, my reaction, my body chemistry actually begins to change, and it reduces the stress levels, healthy in every way, simply by that belief. Now, I'll give you another one.
Okay, yeah, give me another one.
Okay. One that I must succeed, for instance, at everything I do. Now, have you ever said that to yourself?
I've thought it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It would be nice to feel.
It'd be nice, yeah.
I've never actually said those words to myself, but that's a stress-inducing belief. And again, the way we know we have that belief somewhere in our psyche is when you really fail at something, how does it make you feel?
Boy, you're not living up to what your dad said. McCartys are successful.
See? That's the point. The point is that when it affects us we begin to obsess on it, and it affects our relationships and our ability to perform at the same level at our work and relationships, etc. Yeah, then we have that belief. It's there. So here's a way we could replace it. For instance,
okay, let's look at it. How do you do that?
I would like to succeed at everything that I do. And that's reality-based again, right?
Yes.
Okay, but no one is always successful. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay, failing doesn't devalue me. Now, from a Christian perspective, we know that to be true. I can use failure as a stepping stone.
That's true.
It's what I do with the failure that matters. In fact, we know people from history, from the stories, even just looking around us in modern life even, people who've failed tremendously and yet have really been heroic again in the way they've just risen right up on top of that. They've used their failure as a stepping stone to greater success even.
So both of those are really kind of, what would you say, I'm talking now as a Christian, they're also biblical based too. You can look at the stories and you can see
absolutely
that really, hey, just because it looks like I'm a failure doesn't really mean that. Christ on the cross, there he is hanging on the tree. It looks like it's the most unsuccessful scene ever. And yet he can say to the thief on the cross, hey, wait, this is successful. So is that
okay? Yes.
Reality based?
Yes, Don. It's important, I think, to recognize that if a person just says, hey, I have some of those stress-inducing beliefs, there's no shame involved in that. I teach these things. I teach them over and over and over, and yet I'm constantly discovering new stress-inducing beliefs I have. I'm constantly getting upset about something and then thinking, you know what, that didn't have the power to do this to me. It had no power to do this to me. What was I thinking?
Going back
How
from
was
C
I
to A.
processing?
Okay.
Exactly. Going from the consequence to the stressor and saying the stressor didn't have the power to produce that consequence. What was going on? How was I filtering that? How was I processing it? What were my beliefs that enabled it to do that? The supercharger enabled it to do that. Constantly discovering. And so it's a part of a life journey, but it is so rewarding.
Even if you're a stress seminar teacher, your stress seminar can be stress-inducing unless you know how to make it stress-reducing. Okay. How can you actually develop some more healthy stress-reducing beliefs? How can you do that?
Very good question, Don. And there's four points that I would recommend with that. Number one is to make an accurate assessment constantly of what's happening. That we've been talking about that. Accurately assess what's happening. Number 2, explore creative possibilities. And I'll come back to that in just a moment. 3 is read books that are recognized for their healthy outlook.
Okay.
And then note positive responses of other people to situations that cause you stress. I think the book, of course, par excellence, without any question,
Bible.
is the Bible. The Bible is, every time you spend time in the Bible, when someone takes a devotional time every day, they are literally bathing their mind in healthy stress-reducing beliefs. They're becoming saturated with healthy stress-reducing beliefs. The Bible itself challenges stress-reducing beliefs and
stress-inducing beliefs.
Stress-inducing beliefs.
And replaces them.
Replace it and educates us to think in healthy ways. And you're developing the healthiest set of belief systems you can possibly have when you're just reading and going over the stories of the Bible and seeing how healthy people, God-fearing people, related positively to life's experiences. It is so awesome. And we'll, in a future program, we'll talk about some of those things. Yeah. It is the greatest source, in my estimation, of proven stress-reducing beliefs. Now, I'd like to come back to just give you a brief story here of how to creatively process stress as an example. I was at the general conference here a while back, and our conference gave us $1,000 to go, and so and then when that $1,000 ran out, we had to come back home. So I was trying to stretch my $1,000 out as far as I could. I got a hotel that wasn't very expensive, and one night I came home late from the last session, all inspired, got in bed, was doing some reading to put myself to sleep, and the alarm in the next room went off, and it was one of those motel alarms. You know, they go bzz, bzz, bzz. And I thought, well, no problem, they're going to turn it off over there. After about a minute and a half or so, I realized there's nobody in that room. And they turned the thing off as loud as it could be, up as loud. It was like 11:30 at night, and they turned that thing up so loud it was like the wall between our 2 rooms was like an amplifier. I called downstairs and I said, "Ma'am, would you any chance you'd come up, have somebody come up and turn that off?" And they said, "Well, sir, I'm only one on duty tonight, and I can't do it and until later on." So I said, "Okay, well, as soon as you can, please." And about 2 minutes later, I'm trying to read, and this thing goes through my mind: Chinese water torture. You know what I mean? That bzz, bzz, bzz.
All right.
And then I realized instantly I caught what was happening.
Stress-inducing belief.
Exactly right. And so I said, what's some creative way I can deal with this? And I said, I hadn't been thinking directly that God loves me. God may be sending me a signal. Every time that goes bzz, I'm going to think God loves me. And you know what happened? About 10 minutes later, they came up and turned that thing off. I felt they had actually taken something. It became soothing.
We've been talking with Dr. Skip McCarty. We've been talking about stress-reducing beliefs, how they can replace stressors. We hope you contact us about more information about how to find health in this regard that lasts for a lifetime.